This is one of my favorite scenes, like in any movie ever. It's from the movie Spirited Away, directed by this guy, Hayao Miyazaki. It's really simple, just the main character, Chihiro, sitting on this train with her friends. And there's a lot of great and unique things about this scene. Where so many animated movies are jam-packed with noise and action, this scene is quiet and builds tone more than anything else. And there's an element of missing information here which I really find appealing. Who are these weird shadow figures? Why does one look sorta like Chihiro? Is this the train to death or the afterlife? Nothing is answered, and that's really refreshing somehow. But for all the things to love about this moment, one aspect stands out to me. This scene is deeply ambivalent. Everything about it gives the audience conflicting and contradictory feelings. For one, Chihiro doesn't have any way to get back from this little trip. The ticket she has only goes one way, so we're left here concerned for her, wondering how she's gonna return from this great unknown. And these shadow figures, they don't just give us a sense of missing information, they also create an atmosphere where we can't decide what to think. They're these beautiful creatures, but there's something so melancholic about them. Shadowy businessmen, all with super ambiguous destinations, being dropped off in places where we never see them again. We don't know where we're going, and we're worried about that, but we're also just taking in how beautiful everything is. The music fits this perfectly, simultaneously evoking the loneliness and the serenity of a long, pretty train ride to a place we've never been. But what makes this scene even more special is that all that ambivalence, all these complicated emotions that this scene creates, none of it belongs to Chihiro. When the Boilerman tells her that the train ticket only goes one way, she doesn't even blink. She just takes the ticket and goes and doesn't worry about getting back.
The train used to run in both directions, but these days it's a one-way ride. You still want to go?
Yep, I'll walk back along the tracks.
And on the train itself, Chihiro doesn't even register the weirdness of these shadow characters. She just sits there with this placid, almost eerie calmness about her. This scene doesn't build Chihiro's character or even give us a glimpse into what she's feeling. Instead, the audience gets to feel something. Something beautiful, something atmospheric, something ambivalent. The more I have looked at Hayao Miyazaki's work, the more I've noticed that his movies often have this quality about them. So that's this video. Hayao Miyazaki and the Art of Ambivalence. So let's start with Spirited Away, because this train scene is not the only thing in the movie that evokes ambivalence. Really, the entire movie revolves around creating that feeling in its audience. The spirit world itself provides a great example of this. It's simultaneously this beautiful, awe-inspiring, magical world, but it exists in the husk of a former amusement park. It's located where it is because Japan went into a recession.
They built them everywhere in the early 90s. Then the economy went bad, and they all went bankrupt.
The bathhouse is colorful and filled with wacky characters, but it's all powered by one guy who ceaselessly works with the help of his dust slaves. The staff there are fun and cheery, but they're obsessed with gold, and it sort of feels like they're tied involuntarily to this place. Like really, if they wanted to leave, where else could they go? All of these elements create an ambivalent atmosphere, a space that's simultaneously beautiful and ominous, inviting, but scary. More than that, though, the characters are all painted in really ambivalent colors. Often their role in the movie is unclear and shifting. Haku, one of the first characters we meet, he helps out Chihiro and seems like an all-around good guy, but sometimes he's really shady and dislikable. No-Face, this weird creature who Chihiro lets into the bathhouse. He seems like a gross monster of greed and consumption, but it turns out he's only a representation of his environment, and when he's in kinder spaces, he's a kinder creature. Even Yubaba, the cruel old woman who runs the bathhouse. By the end, Chihiro's calling her Grandma.
Oh. Hey, Granny!
Granny?
We're just never exactly sure how to feel about anyone. And again, what's interesting is that Chihiro rarely registers any of this. She never stops and wonders to herself, what's the deal with this place? Is it nice or scary? She just sort of goes with it, does what's asked of her, tries to get her parents back. The feelings of ambivalence that this movie evokes are owned by the audience, and the audience alone. Okay, let's talk about another movie, Princess Mononoke. Because it uses ambivalence in a really similar way. The whole movie is about the conflict between a burgeoning industrial mining town and the natural world of gods. And the film seems to have a just watch attitude about this conflict.
You forget she's a god. It will take more than that.
At no point does one faction, nature, or the town come out with a clear moral high ground. Rather, we're just sort of left in this world, between these two poles, not knowing exactly who we should side with. And let's take a look at Lady Eboshi, the leader of Irontown, a character who we're really never able to completely pin down. We've been conditioned through years of storytelling and filmmaking to see a character like Eboshi, a leader of a big industrial corporation, and immediately come to the conclusion that they're a villain, or at least are aligned with forces of evil. But with Eboshi, this conclusion is repeatedly challenged. In this scene, for example, Lady Eboshi takes Ashitaka, the protagonist, to see the people who make her weapons. And this happens.
You must not take your revenge on Lady Eboshi. She's the only one who saw us as human beings. We are lepers. The world hates and fears us, but she took us in and washed our rotting flesh and bandaged us.
This scene forces the audience to question their expectations about Eboshi, makes us see her as a complicated individual who we can't dismiss as evil, but who we can't valorize either. And just like in Spirited Away, the feelings of ambivalence we feel for Eboshi and for these warring groups in general is only truly experienced by the audience of the movie, because Ashitaka doesn't really seem to care about any of it. At the start of the movie, this old lady tells him to
see what you can see with eyes unclouded by hate.
And that's it. That's just what he's gonna do. Does he register that Eboshi is an ambiguous figure? Does he reflect on the whole nature versus industrialism thing? Nope, he's just here to
see with eyes unclouded by hate.
Eyes unclouded.
And look at this scene with the leper guy again. When he gives this stirring speech about how we shouldn't judge Eboshi too harshly, does the camera cut back to Ashitaka so that we can see his reaction to all of this? Nope, because he doesn't care. The scene is here because we care. We're the ones making the decisions about Eboshi, and fundamentally, this guy is telling us that we shouldn't come to our conclusions about her too quickly.
How does the action feel to you? Better?
Smooth as silk, the perfect thing for ruling the world.
Okay, so this video is getting kinda long, and there's more I want to say about the whole ambivalence thing than just Miyazaki movies sure are ambivalent. So I'm just gonna quickly jump through some more of his movies and show you how this theme is present throughout. In My Neighbor Totoro, there's this suggestion that the reason that Totoro and his friends appear to these two young girls is to help them cope with their mother's sickness. But the characters never seem to make this connection themselves. The audience is the only group of people who feel in any way ambivalent or melancholic about Totoro's role. Howl's Moving Castle. Ambivalence doesn't play as crucial of a role in this movie, but there's this war going on in the background that Howl keeps avoiding. The war is this really ambiguous thing, and the audience can never be sure if Howl is a pacifist or just kind of a coward. None of the characters address this either. It's just sort of there for us to feel weird about. The Wind Rises, Hayao Miyazaki's last movie. It's all about this one Japanese engineer in the years leading up to World War II, and no character discusses that all of this man's work, all his craftsmanship and artistry, it's devoted to designing warplanes, objects of killing and destruction. There's a scene at the very end where this comes up.
美しいな、いい仕事だ。
一機も戻ってきませんでした。
生きて帰りし者なし。飛行機は美しくも呪われた夢だ。大空は皆飲み込んでしまう。
But for the most part, the audience is the only group of people who are thinking about this. We are the ones who feel ambivalent about it. So we've established that this very specific, audience-centered ambivalence is all over the place in Hayao Miyazaki's filmography. But what does this technique do to these films? Why is it so good? Well, I think there's a really simple explanation for this. By directing the questions that his movies evoke at the people who watch those movies, Hayao Miyazaki gets rid of the middleman. We're not watching these movies to see what Chihiro thinks about the spirit world, or what Ashitaka sees in Lady Eboshi. We get to have and struggle with and try to answer those questions ourselves. By making his films feel so ambivalent and ambiguous, Miyazaki does more than create characters we can relate to and root for. He lets us relate to a world filled with complexities and conflicts.
I didn't know the forest spirit made the flowers grow.
And I think that this tendency in Miyazaki's work can tell us something about filmmaking in general. Western film, especially modern Western animation, is a cult of characters. When we watch a movie, we're always directed toward the characters. A lot of the time when we like a movie, we say it's because the characters were good and real and had depth. When we don't like a movie, we complain that the characters were one-dimensional, or that they didn't act from a place unique to their personality. But Miyazaki movies just don't work that way. I mean, look at Pixar's 22 Rules of Storytelling. The 13th rule on the list is give your characters opinions. Passive and malleable might seem likable to you as you write, but it's poison to the audience. But passive, malleable, that's the heart of Chihiro's character. And it works because there's a lot of time and energy that goes into giving us this big, complicated, emotional experience. Sometimes what we want is a deep character, someone with a life and interiority and beliefs all their own. But sometimes, all we need is a little girl staring straight forward on an ambivalent little train ride to an unknown place. So that's all I had to say about Miyazaki, for now at least. I make a new video every week and I'm always looking for new ideas, so if you have one, feel free to let me know in the comments. See you next time.